excited about the topic today and just the response that we're hearing from our HR partners and our clients and just some of the feedback. And one of the things thank you guys for joining today, because this is just our way of giving back to the HR community and our partners. So as we've kind of said, hopefully you'll learn something today, take what you need, leave what you don't, because there's a ton of information out there in the marketplace. So we'll give it just one more minute. And Allison, if you want to bring up the
I'll get it going. And while I'm
slide
for
presentation, we'll get started at 2 after the hour.
Yep, awesome. And if everybody would, if you can, if you will introduce yourself in the chat. I can see that it's working. So if you'll just tell us your name, if you're with a company or you're looking for a job, like put that in there too, and tell us, your title, what you do. I'd love to see who's on our call. We have some new people on this week.
Yep. Okay, we see the Grand Canyon.
That is Sedona.
Oh, Sedona, okay.
Last week. I wish it was last week, last year. All right, let me get my chat set up here.
No worries.
There we go.
Well, good morning, good evening, midday, wherever you're calling from. We wanted to thank you for joining our HR Fireside chat series. The purpose is how we effectively communicate the challenge, and more specifically, the opportunity as it relates to what we're hearing around the pandemic. Our goal is to move our HR clients and partners from initially we had the notification, we've been in this response state. We want to bring you real-time information, but also help our clients and partners move to the strategic thinking component. We will come out of this, and we know that it's easy to kind of get stuck in just the daily fire drills and response, and that is critically important. But how do you begin to pull yourself up and pull yourself out and be able to advise the organization on what you should be doing, or starting those thought conversations about what the future may look like? Our topic today is about supporting and empowering leaders to be able to do just that. We need to stay in the notification state because things are changing real time. But how do you engage your business leaders and your clients and customers, or whatever the ensemble may be, in order to kind of get future forward? So my name is Tiki Favorath. I'm one of your co-hosts for today. I'm the senior partner and managing director at a little company called HR & Co. And so we provide end-to-end HR consulting services to our customers, and through our channel partners, we're able to deliver that. And so I'm going to turn over to my co-host to introduce herself, and then we'll get started.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Allison Nail-Malone, and my company is Malone Consultants Group, where we do think, be, and speak leadership differently. And so I'm really excited about our conversation today. And this is an interactive conversation. So Tiki and I are going to give you a little bit of information. That interaction also includes making sure you have your cell phone and your PC ready, because we're going to do a poll here in just a moment. We're just going to drop some information, and then let's have some dialogue around it. Now, as Tiki and I talk, make sure that you also include any questions or thoughts or ideas in the chat, because this is not just about us dropping information. This is about us as leaders and professionals in our organizations working together, one, to know that we're not alone, and two, that we all have great ideas, and we just want to facilitate a conversation.
Right.
So with your phone or your PC, this is a poll. So pull your phone out, and what you'll want to do is text to 22333, and in the response section put Allison and 677 with your answer. So we are now in week 3. For some people it's week 2. As leaders of teams and organizations, what is one word to describe how you're feeling right now? So just type in one word, and we're going to have a word cloud pop up. And you can also do this on your PC at the website that you see there at the top of the screen. So I'm gonna pop something in here too. Overwhelming, what else? Got, might be a little bit slow for some. There we go. Oh, petrified.
Petrified,
Yeah.
tired,
Tired.
fatigued.
Yeah.
All of these words are critically important because one of the things as leaders, if you're feeling this way, your leaders are feeling this way, your employees are feeling this way, your families are feeling this way, and that's why we need to talk about it and get to a point where we can help you move to as best as we can to the next level. Uncertain, petrified, overwhelming, fatigue, exhausted, tired, responsible. That's a very good word.
Yeah.
Responsible.
Yeah, love that. All right, I'm gonna lock these answers.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you for sharing that with us. It helps provide the tone and tenor and the context that we'll need. Just a little housekeeping, as Allison mentioned, this is a very interactive session. We do want to respect those that have taken time to attend. You just simply add your email address in the chat if you'd like any official Q&A summary from today or for us to share the video link. To ask a question, you can ask it via chat or you can raise your hand to join. This session is designed to be interactive and not just a bunch of information. That's what makes it really different versus some of the bigger forum. And just so you know, all questions will be reformatted into a Q&A document that we send out to just the approved addresses. So even though we may invite you, we're only sharing those with those that choose to attend and want the information. So that's our housekeeping for today. And Allison, I'll turn it over to you, and I'm going to just check out the chat to see if any questions came up.
Awesome. So we have one more poll just to check in again with you. So our main theme today is centered around communication. Same process as we did as the test poll earlier, but this is choosing A, B, C, D, or E, and the amount of communication that is being shared with our employees, whether you're in the process of sharing information or you're an employee receiving information. What are your thoughts around how you're feeling? Is it been overwhelming and you're getting way too much information? Are you feeling like it's just not been enough? It's still a work in progress, or you're kind of feeling like right now it's just non-existent, or NA, I'm not really sure how to answer that. So I'm curious where you're at in your organizations right now, or maybe if you are not in an organization, you can also put in NA as well. So it's helpful to know so that Tiki and I can also share the relevant information, and that we're hoping that by the end of this that you'll feel like, okay, how do we move forward in our communication? So we're looking at, it's not been enough, it's still a work in progress, it's been non-existent. Oh, that's tough, especially now that we're kind of into week 3 of this. So our hope is either if you are in charge or influencing or impacting communication, that what we talk about today will be helpful and useful in that process. If you're not in charge of communication, like how can you influence your leaders to have that communication? Yeah. Tiki, anything else you want to add to that?
No, one of the things I want to say, and also as you look at today, you know, some of these tips that you're seeing us use, polling, Zoom, these are all the things we want you to experience. I've been working with a large banking client that asks, how do we keep people engaged? And so we created some fun games through Slack, through instant message, whatever resource your company has. So we want you to also see this as a practical way to engage your workforce if they're working remote, or some great ideas. So it's very interesting that there's has not been enough, or it's still a work in progress. And so those are the things we want you to help resolve today. So let's go to work.
Yeah. So Tiki and I have split up this conversation to focus on two areas around the topics that we talk about this month. One from a leadership mindset, and the other from what does the process really look like? And so we've all had that moment when we've been on the airplane where we experience turbulence. Maybe you've been rudely awakened from that sudden jolt, or you've been you had to stand up to go to the restroom and you have to hold on to someone's seat. And so within a few seconds, a pilot's voice comes over the intercom. So what is it that you're listening for? You are listening for that reassurance through the uncertainty of the turbulence. With COVID-19 concerns around the globe, it's not just the airline industry doing that, but we're all experiencing this right now. Many business leaders are asking us, how can they communicate uncertainty both internally to their teams and externally to their clients or their patients or their customers? Whether it's about participating in an upcoming conference or new processes that are being put forward, or how to deliver on a signed proposal. Communication in the face of uncertainty is a constant leadership challenge in the best of circumstances. So communicating in the face of crisis, it is one of the leader's most important responsibility, and it's so critical that we not take this leadership skill for granted. Sometimes we confuse communication or great communication with public speaking or prowess during negotiation, or with the ability to converse comfortably with a diverse range of people. And this is true and this is important, but communicating in a crisis with complexity, I can't say the word, it's complex, and uncertainty abounds. And that's what we're kind of experiencing in this time right now. And it requires a planful and intentional approach. So while some of that communication will be generic, like the need to know summaries of the latest information from the government and the public health authorities, what's happening that's specific to your organization, to your teams, much of it will be particular to the key stakeholders that you want your communication to go to. For example, your employees will need to know what you're doing as an organization or as a leadership to protect their health, how their work lives will be impacted, any additional travel restrictions or event restrictions, and how their benefits will be covered during situations like this. So Tiki is going to cover some of the best practices around those processes when it comes to the communication piece. And she speaks from today experience, like today in the moment experience in managing communication from the C-suite to all the key stakeholders. And so what I want to share with you is some of the mindset around before you begin that process. And so first is to be thinking about, how do I manage the outcomes, and maybe not necessarily just the activities. So one of the most important tips is to set clear and tangible goals that are easily understood without just getting hung up on the way it was always done. We know now that business is not going to be done the way it was always done. And what we have seen is some of our organizations are still a little resistant to that. And so when you set tangible deliverables and manage the outcomes rather than just the activities, do this wherever possible. You can also negotiate deadlines. You can also talk about how do you incorporate the entire team? So how do you manage with your leaders to get the information from the people that they manage in order to think about, how do we manage the outcomes versus just the activities? I know I probably don't need to tell you all of this, but you may need to be able to impact and influence the other people in your leadership team is to remember your team's emotional needs, your leaders and the people who are on the front lines. The emotional and social needs of your teams won't go on pause. It hasn't gone on pause for you when we're kind of talking about this self-quarantine and lockdown. In fact, it's probably increased for most people. I mean, Tiki and I were talking yesterday with one of our clients, and that was a good portion of our conversation. Wasn't about what we were doing, it was about how people were feeling. And so this is a scary time, and people are worried about their jobs, their health, and their loved ones, and even their colleagues. So making sure that first, that you're doing self-support, two, that you're supporting your colleagues. And if you are in a role where you have leadership above you, like, how are you finding ways to support them as well? Because as most of you know, when you're in leadership roles, it tends to be a little bit lonely. And so who's caring for us as well? It may also be a good approach to set up regular communication meetings that can just focus on that well-being versus just work. Something like a morning coffee break, got mine this morning, or virtual drinks once a week, where everybody brings their coffee or their drink and shares about how they're feeling on Zoom. Another idea is to have ongoing discussion on Microsoft Teams that everyone agrees to check in once or twice a day or a week. And so leaders who are able to communicate across the organization can help prioritize well-being by encouraging staff to set up this sort of initiative and providing information or guidelines on the best way to work from home, or if you're having to work in the front lines, how do you manage that? Send out emails or do quick videos that help with specific tips on emotional well-being or resources that your organization has. There's plenty of information on the internet now, and Tiki and I have sent out information on this as well. And so in sharing information and knowing your audience in advance is really, really critical right now. And what you'll want to do is that thorough strategic analysis of who you're communicating to. What are their concerns? What are the questions? What are their interests around this? And what do they need immediate answers to? Number 3 is to pause and breathe. Before you start communicating to others, just take a minute to pause and breathe. When you are the most senior person in the room, your team takes cues from you. And when I say room, I mean the virtual room and later on in the physical room. But your team takes its cues from you in terms of how to act and how to feel. So taking a minute to center yourself will ensure that you are present in a calm, rational force to your colleagues and your clients or your patients or your customers. And this applies in the virtual setting or in those conference calls that are going on. And make sure that when you're in that space to speak and share information with confidence and transparency. So since information is changing swiftly and it's like information overload, it can be very easy for us as leaders to make decisions or communicate at the same pace. And it's okay to pause and breathe and also communicate with your people and your colleagues. Like, here's what we know today, here's what we learned from yesterday, and here's how we're going to think about moving forward tomorrow. And put that caveat in there, like, we're not 100% certain because everything is changing. You can confidently express doubt or uncertainty while still sounding like you are in control of the situation. You might say things like, reports are still coming in, but what we understand so far is this. And communicating frequently with your colleagues, with your managers, with your key stakeholders, even without news to report, so that they know that you're actively following the issues. People will be more willing to forgive you in the in-progress ideas if they feel like they're a part of the process and progress, even if you don't know what tomorrow looks like. And so what happens within organizations around the coronavirus affects everyone in the communities around them as well. At the very least, organizations should do their best to make sure that their actions do not negatively affect members of the community, but that you can also think about a crisis as a time to enhance relationships with your local communities and with your people that you are connected with. You can provide resources such as cleaning supplies or food in those times of quarantine, those that are in quarantine, making sure that you're providing information to local media to help calm the communities down while enhancing your organization's credibility. And last but not least, to provide transparency about what is actually happening within the organization rather than just going radio silent. You can also share in ways that you're helping your local, national, and global community in crisis. So Tiki, I'm going to hand the process piece over to you.
So Allison, thank you so much. One of the things I can tell you and just to take away is to pause, breathe, and slow down. Yesterday, as we were meeting with one of our clients, I kind of admittedly expressed like, you know what, today was hard. If I think about all the stuff and reading the CARES Act, helping business leaders think through how to stabilize the business, looking at operating expenses, thinking about the implication to people and their families, writing a protocol. If someone notifies us, what does that mean to say that they may have been infected with the virus? How do we take that information real time and notify our business continuity teams, put a protocol in place? Who do we need to tell? What's the implication to customers? And so yesterday, admittedly, I had to take a step back and says, pause, breathe, what's my issue? Because I was clearly in the middle of it. But then how do I step out of that? And so as leaders, not only are we taking care of our families, not only are we taking care of the organizations and the leaders, not only are we thinking about all of the people that we're supporting and their families and the communities, not only are we required to read all of this new regulation and policy that's coming out, as well as think about the modifications to our own policies, it can become very overwhelming. And this is the time where leadership needs to really step in. And so I'm going to tell you, even if you have to take these 4 points and put them on a sticky and watch them, manage for outcomes, remember what my emotional state is. Pause. What's the problem I need to solve? And then how do I share that with confidence and transparency? Sometimes just having those 4 bullets in front of you will help course correct and keep you focused. So before I go into the process, we're at 9:21. We have plenty of time. Let me just stop here, do 2 things. Let me open up the bridge to see if there's anyone who has any questions that you need to have resolved around a leadership challenge that you are experiencing. And again, confidentially, or if you want to just put it in the chat, why don't you write your question in chat? Because we don't want you to leave here having the same mindset that you showed up with. So let me just pause here. Allison, let's open up the chat, or if you guys want to take yourself off mute, most definitely would do that. Also, if you're just joining, if you would just introduce yourself, your name, your role, your organization. If you'd like to have this replay sent to you, put your email address. So while we do that, there
Yes, so
was,
yeah.
go
Oh,
ahead.
go ahead.
There was one question that came in around what was the polling tool earlier that we used to do the poll. It's called Poll Everywhere. It's a really neat tool where you can actually do live polls. You can do word clouds. You can do ABCD. You can do Q and different type of questions.
Mhm.
It's a live interactive tool that allows you to let people confidentially tell you what they're thinking or questions that you may need to ask, and people can kind of see those results real time.
Yeah, that's a great question. And like there's a free version, and then up to 25 people can respond. And then after that, you pay a certain fee. It's a great resource.
Yep.
And then Shamira asked, Tiki, I don't know if you can go over those 4 points again, but also if for those of you that have a question and you want to just unmute yourself or raise your hand, if you're on your PC, you can hover down below at the end, at the bottom of the screen, or on your phone, there's a way to scroll through and then select unmute. You're welcome to do that too. This is an interactive piece as well.
Yep. So the 4 points I would say, that I'm just going back to Allison's thing. I'm a sticky note kind of person to keep myself directive. Maybe at the top he says leadership in the moment. And, 1, manage to outcomes, not activities, or whatever is prevalent in your organization. I need to focus on what. Remember that your emotional state and the emotional state of those that you're interacting with. So I always say, what is my issue? And how do I resolve that versus how do I then move forward to help people solve the issues that they're facing? Because we have to also, to Allison's point, deal with self-care before we start helping someone else. Number 3, pause, breathe, slow down. Because if you are moving at 100 miles an hour, not that we all won't make mistakes, but did you put the best recommendation or solution forward? And then finally, having that, what's the issue? What's my issue? What do I need to solve? How do I then speak and step with confidence and transparency so that I can help calm um, the leaders, the employees, our partners, our customers, whatever your particular situation may be. So for me, I'm a sticky note kind of person, and sometimes I have to have those things right in front of me so that I don't lose track of what I'm looking at. Okay, so I didn't see any more questions come in. Again, just to be respectful for time, we'll keep moving. So we've talked about the what, kind of sort of what do leaders need to do. So the biggest thing is, how do I do it? And oftentimes in these situations, we get questions from our clients about how do you do it. So the first thing as it relates to communication, I think there was a even split between not enough or still in progress. You have to build your communication plan and roadmap. And what I will do for those that put their email address, I'll send you a template. This is a tried and true tool that we've used in global organizations as well as small organizations. And it simply goes like this. What's the message? Who do we need to communicate, and what's the impact? And then there's this chart that says, what's the key message? What's the vehicle? How do we deliver that? Is that a email? Is that a phone call? Is that a Zoom meeting? Is that a chat? So that you're really clear about what vehicle you're using to communicate. Who's the audience? Who are you talking to? Is it the board? Is it your, executive leadership team? Is it your senior leadership team? Is it all managers? Is it all employees? Is it partners, customers? It allows you to drill down to who's in the audience. What are your talking points? What are those 2 to 3 key messages that you need to convey, or call to action that you need to convey? And when will you get it done? Is it daily, weekly, bi-monthly, whatever the cadence is of that communication? So what's the message? Who's the audience? What's the vehicle? Who's the audience? What are those key points? And it's bullet point. And then what's the required response, the cadence and response of that. And so even though, for lack of a better term, it's a tool, it helps you go back to your leadership teams or those that are responsible for communications, like, what are we trying to say? Who are we saying it to? How are we going to say it to them? What's the bottom line on top? And then how do we make sure that it's at a frequency and timing that's relevant? And if there's a call to action, when do we need to do this by? And so at minimum, I work off of a communication plan. I'm always checking that and making sure, do we need to communicate with our employees every other day? What's our messages? What's changed? What do you need to know? What's changed and what do you need to know? And every day in our leadership routines, we're asking what's changed and what do people need to know? And I'll give you a key example. We just are getting ready to implement the Families First Coronavirus Act. And so working with our clients, there are some that is 50 below, there are some that's over. So what is it? What's the impact? What do they need to know? And then also for leaders, what's the implication to their organization? What's the payroll codes? All of these things that we need to know. There's a lot of things around the CARES First Act. So business leaders are thinking about how to take advantage of some of these new policies that's in place. So how do we communicate that out? So bottom line on top, get your roadmap, make it very simple and clear. And every time you're in a leadership meeting, what's the message? Who needs to know? How are we going to deliver it? What's the key points? What's the required deliverable or the cadence of this message? And that helps you begin to track how much you're communicating. Second point, and I see there's a question in chat, and so I'll come back to that. You need to hold regular meetings and potential virtual breakouts. And so depending on your role, that may be meetings with your CEO, that may be meeting with your boards, that may be meetings with your executive leadership team, your business continuity team, all managers, all employees. You understand your organization more than anyone. And so you have to determine, what do those regular meetings look like? And then it goes back to thing number one. What's our key messages? What are we saying? What's the cadence, and what's any required deliverables from that? And just to kind of give you an example, one of my clients activated a business continuity team. It's a representative from all of the key functions of our business, from the business, and I sit on there as their HR advisor. And so at 1 week at one period we were meeting every day. We just moved to every other day, and we have a standing agenda. What's changed? What do people need to know? And who do we need to tell? And we work through that list. Are there any technology issues, or are there any customer issues? And we're constantly working through that list and keeping a running track of issues and opportunities that we've had to address so that we can go back and communicate to the board or whoever may come back later and says, what did you do? And so we're holding those meetings. With one client, where every 2 weeks we're having an all employee Zoom meeting where our leadership team or a member of our leadership team or business continuity team is saying, we want to keep you informed. What's changed and what do you need to know? We've kept the messaging very, very simple. We're not sending out a bunch of emails that's overwhelming people. They don't have time to read it. They're at home with their kids. They're working all throughout the day. They're splitting shifts with their families. And so we need to recognize the environment. And so we've kept the messaging very clear. So again, these are some suggestions. One client, we said, I think the thing is that you broke the remote. And so this leader, every now and again at random, will sign a question through their instant message vehicle they have, and whoever responds back fast or with the response, what is social distancing? What should you be doing now? They broke the remote, kind of sort of, it's a game. And then they recognize that individual for staying focused and on task and providing information. So there's so many great ideas that we can help you. Slack channel, I think HubSpot, the list goes on and on around just the different things. I use Slack in my own personal business, and we're constantly chatting. And I think I have 4 or 5 Slack channels with some of my clients and partners around different things that's taking place. And so it's instant communication about what needs to take place. Which goes to point number 3, use technology. Allison had mentioned yesterday, we met with a client yesterday who doesn't normally work in a virtual environment, who in all the spirit of transparency really had an organization that was built on people being in the office and cultivating talent that way. And so we talked about, what does this dynamically do to the shift of the culture in the organization now that they're out of that? And so I will tell you, use technology to your benefit. If you don't have a technology policy, keep it very simple. I've seen companies, we had a Zoom happy hour at 6 o'clock where I think it was like 40 people. We got on and talked about non-work related stuff. My daughter joined the Zoom. My husband came in and said hello, so people can just feel connected to their coworkers. Some introverts like it. Some extroverts miss the connection with their colleagues. There's different family dynamics that's playing out. If you haven't offered EAP to your staff, do that. People have different dynamics in their home environments versus their work environments. And then finally, prepare for the if and when. Each of you as a leader should have a contingency plan. If this happened, we will do this. When this happens, we will do this. And that's really keeping leaders focused on, what does 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 30 days, 60 days, 90 days look like? And so that we begin to start building this recovery plan that you can start working towards. Do our policies need to change? Do we do a shift in our culture alignment? How do we get leaders back on board? If you've had to RIF workforce members or furlough, what does that mean to the culture and what you've had to do through this unprecedented time? And so you need to start creating, go back to the roadmap. If this, then this, when are we going to do this? And start bringing leaders up to start talking about the next evolution of when we come out of this. Again, some of this may seem very fundamental. You may already be ahead of the curve. We want you to have everything that you need in order to do this. And as we mentioned before, there's a ton of resources. I'm on conference calls and webinars all day getting information, but we want to, distill that down to the most essential things that you need so that you can action and activate. If you need more information on the policies, the regulations, things that are changing, and you're not clear, what are all of these things and what does it mean to your people? Please write us a note in chat, and we most definitely can call you directly, or at our next call, we can usurp our time to say, what is the Family First Coronavirus Act and what does it mean? What is the CARES Act and what does it mean? How should you be communicating and what does that mean? And we're more than happy to do that. So I appreciate it. I'm just going to button up the 2 points. Remember to have a plan. You need to write it down, make it plain and clear. Meet with your key stakeholders frequently. What's changed and what do they need to know? Use technology to your benefit. We're all forced to do that now. And then start moving forward and thinking if and when these conditions changed, what's the bottom line on top and what's our plan? So that's my time for today. I see there's a couple of things in chat. I'm going to pause and let Allison address those things that came in chat, and then we'll keep going forward.
Yeah, Tiki, I think you might have had a question that came to you privately because
Okay.
I see a couple of things, and I've had a couple of people send their emails privately as well. The thing as you're looking through that, Tiki, the thing I want everyone to also recognize and own and acknowledge is not everyone on is the person that leads the communication. Take these tools and be the person that brings solutions as a support to your leader. And then if you are the person in charge or you're part of that team with that communication, these are resources that are tried and true. You may already have something in place, but see how some of these tools and resources can even enhance what's happening today in the communication piece of it. And also, you know, Tiki and I are here to help brainstorm with you as well. And we do that as a service to the people that we serve as our clients and community too. So Tiki, was there another question that you saw?
No, I think there's something that came in as folks put their email addresses in there. So thank you. I will send out that comms tool, the template. So,
Awesome.
and that was it. Okay. So, yep. So guys, that's it. We want to keep it simple. If you need something, let us know. Let's kind of button this up and then we'll open up the lines and we'll call it a morning.
Yeah, so our last poll question, and then we'll just open it up for anyone who has questions, comments, or maybe you have a best practice that's happening right now that you think might be helpful for other leaders that are on this call, would be helpful to share with them. But I'm curious for you, as you think about the information that Tiki and I have shared with you this morning, what do you think might be one key action, or what has been one key takeaway that you think you'll be implementing or at least sharing out with your leaders or your teams after today's conversation? And this, you can put in as many words as you want to. This is kind of fill in the blank. So what's that one key action, one process, one idea, or takeaway that you're going to be implementing? Communication plan, excellent. So just remember that you can text to 22333, and then in the response, Allison NN677 with your sentence or words. Yeah, pause and breathe. The 4 points Tiki talked about. Communication often and keep it simple as key, and having a communications plan, excellent. I'll just give it a few more seconds to let people type in their answers. You can do this on your PC or your phone. And we'll tell you, this has been a really great resources poll anywhere or everywhere. And it's polleverywhere.com. And like I mentioned, there is a free version up to 25 responses. And then after that, after it caps at 25, it's just a small fee. It really isn't that expensive. Here's some other people are saying, I like the reminder to keep it simple.
Yep.
Planning for when in writing, so key.
Yep.
Ask for more frequent communication. This is awesome.
Yep. I think it's all great. Let me just, before we have a few more minutes, anyone on the line want to open up anything you did not get today, anything that you feel like I need to go off this call and have something in my hand, you can type it in the chat or feel free to open up your line. Again, this is our giving back, and we want to make sure that you have what you need.
You can raise your hand, you can just unmute yourself, or just type something in the chat. And of course, Tiki and I are here throughout the week till next Tuesday. You can send us an email and we can schedule a time to chat, or we can just chat through email if that's helpful.
Yep. All right. Well, gang, this has been amazing. Thank you for taking 40 minutes out of your morning. We hope that it was beneficial. Anything that we can do. I mean, there's a ton coming through the wave. There's many sources. Feel free to leverage it, but we want to be here to help. So, Allison, over to you.
Yeah. Well, just as a reminder, I know several of you have already put in your email. We will be getting this recording and putting it together to send to you to have in your toolbox. We'll also include the communications plan that has been tried and true, and any other additional resources that we find that will really help support you. I'm so grateful that you've shown up today. We're so excited that we've had new people and people who've shown up the last time. And just thank you so much for taking 45 minutes out of your time. Actually, we'll be ending a little bit shorter, so you'll have an extra couple of minutes.
Thanks, guys. Have a great week. And if you need something, let us know.
Thank you. Bye, everyone.